So this is the landing page. Here you have this component. Probably this will have a app bar component, and you will have a landing page component. This component displays both as sign in sign up button. Okay, you can click any button and you can sign in and sign up. But once you sign in, right, after sign in, this button should not come. Okay, let's assume these are two components. Okay, these two components are rendered by the app component. Okay, so let's call this component as a um, probably app bar component, and this component is the landing component. This is the landing page component. Um, so we have a app component. From the app component, we are calling the app bar component. This app bar component is displaying this complete line till here. Okay, this is one image and two buttons, and then it is calling some landing component. The landing component is displaying this part and this picture, this image. Okay, now once I log in, correct, once I sign in using a username password, I should not see this button again. I should see add courses and log out, and I should not see this button again. Okay, so now how to bring that? Obviously, whether a user logged in or not, you need to have a state. Okay, so in the app bar component, if I maintain this state, okay, so when after I sign in, I can go set this state. After I set the state is set, I can display add courses and log out. Okay, we can try to do that. Okay, and this button also should not come. In the landing page component also, this button should not be seen. Like when I go sign in, okay, let's give an email. So when I sign in, see this button is gone and add course is coming here. Okay, so basically this is what is called conditional rendering. Okay, whether based on whether the user is logged in or not. If it is logged in,
And
you have to display
please watch
add
this video
course,
carefully. Here you will
and
find the.
So if the user is logged in, you have to display add course and courses. If the user is not logged in, you have to display sign in, sign up. Okay. So here, so how to do this? How to have this state information in both the components? Both the components need this information. If I have the information only in the app bar component, only I can display here. But this information, right, whether the user is logged in or not, it is needed in both the components, in add bar and this landing page. What one way to do is you can have this state variable here, and this state variable user is logged in or not in the parent component. Right, in the parent component you can have this, and you can pass it as props to the app bar and the landing page, and you can use the value. But the problem is you have to pass to the child component, and from the child component it needs to go, if it has to goes to the another child component, then you have to pass via props. This is called props drilling. And another problem is whenever you change the state, all the child component of this app bar will get re-rendered. Okay, that will decrease the performance of your application. Okay, so this is not a good way to do it. Okay, but what is the other way to do it? So other way to do it is you can store this state in a common place. That is what is by using context API. Okay, in a common place you can store it. Okay, this state alone using the context API, and these components can get the information about the state from this through this context API. Okay, so this will avoid props drilling because you need not pass this information as props. You are storing the state in a common place. Okay, but the other issue here is, right, these components, right, have to be re-rendered to use this state. So which of the components are using this state, which of the components alone has to be re-rendered, finding that will be difficult. Okay, for example, uh, there is another component, let's say update or something. This component doesn't need this state. Okay, how you will conditionally re-render the components which are using this state alone when you are storing in a common place? Okay, that is the problem. But you can store in a common place and you can avoid props drilling using the context API. First, you will understand how to use the context API for this problem. So now let's see how this app component. So app bar component is calling the app bar. Okay. So our app component is calling the app bar and the landing page. Okay. So in the app bar, what you do is simple, right? In the app bar, if the user is logged in, right, I'm calling add course. The add course will display me the add course and the logout button. Okay. If the user is not logged in, I'm calling sign up component. Sign up component will display me sign up and sign in button. Simple. But how I get the information whether the user is logged in or not is using this context API use auth. Okay. Now if you see, right, all these components are under this auth context. I'm calling the app component itself under the auth context. Okay. Now what is this auth context? In the auth context, is a component. Okay. I am creating a context. Here only I am going to store the value. In this context only I am going to store this whether the user is logged in or not. Okay. So in this, under this context, right, what are the values under the context available? User is logged in or not, and we can change the state to whether login or log out. Okay. So when you log in, the logged in will be set to true. When you log out, the log out will be set to false. The login will be set to false. Okay. So now this auth context, right? I'm calling this component, right? Auth context. So from where I'm calling this component? I'm calling this component from here, from the index.js, right? Let's go double click this and go this. Okay. So this will be passed as prompts to the auth context. So this app component, it is a prompts to the auth context. Okay. So auth context prompts, this is the children, right? This is the props, right? This is nothing but the app component. Okay. So if you come here, right? So in the auth context dot provider, under this I have put this props. What is the children props? App, right? Auth context props is app, right? So in the context provider, you are in the context, who are the provider? The under the provider, the auth context provider, what are the components are there, right? These components can use this value. So what are the components under the app? They can use these values. Use user logged in, login, logout. But in our case, all the components are under app. So all the components can use these values. So when you use context, right? So this use context, which context you are using? You are using this auth context. This auth context, what it has these values. So youth auth, nothing but using this context. So when you call use auth, you basically get these three values. Okay. So in the app bar component, I am calling use auth. In that first variable alone I am using. So and you based on that value I am changing this. Okay, now you see here on click I am using logout. Okay, where is the logout function? It is in the context only. So you thought, but same variable name you have to use. Whatever variable name you have used, right? The same value only you have to use here also. So when I hear what I'm doing, logout is nothing but a function. Okay. So in the context, I have the state variable and these two functions. Okay. And I'm just using calling that functions here. Okay. So to simplify this, in the here I'm creating this auth context. So let's assume that we create this auth context. Okay, this is the auth context. AUTH context. Okay, here what I have is logged in, and then I have login function, and I have logout function. Whatever value you are putting, right, this auth context dot provider value you are putting, right, all the values will be in the context. Okay, when you do use context of this auth context, right, you can get all the values because you're using this context, so you can get these values. So if you put use context, you can put like this, login equal to use context. What is the context name? Auth context. Use context of auth context, AUTH context. If you do this, you can get that value, login value. Login is what? Nothing but a function. So you can call the function. Okay. So you are putting these values in the context and you are using this use context and getting the value. Okay. This you are the complete. So what are the child components? These child components only can use the use context. If there is any component away from this list, right, they cannot use this use context. What are the components under this provider only, they can use a use context and get the values. So this is another way. Okay, you can log in, log out. Okay. Now, the problem here is whenever you set this value, right, suppose I log out. What are the changes to be done when I log out? Here, I am basically logging out. I'm calling navigate to home because you call logout, correct? When you call logout, what is happening? When you call logout, you are basically going in the state variable as false. If the state variable is false, this component will re-render, correct? When this component re-render, right, does all the components in this will re-render? So after logging out, we are navigating to home, which is navigate slash. So this will navigate us to the, it will navigate us to the, what is that? Navigate slash. It will go to the landing page. So it will display the components again, but that is not required because whenever you change this, right? Whenever you log out, when you log out, what is happening? When you are logging out, you are basically changing the state variable. When the state variable changes, this component will re-render. When this component re-renders, right, you will basically re-render all the components in the child, which is the app. So without this also, it will work. So this navigate to home, this change is not required. So we can remove this. Okay, so this is how you store the data in a common context, and then you basically you avoid prof drilling. But the problem is, whenever you log in or log out or anything, right? Some component might not require that value. Okay, and that component will also get re-rendered, right? When you use a context API. So that is the problem with context API. Okay, the problem with context API is, right, so you have the app bar component, and you have your this is the app component, this is the app bar component, and this is the landing component. Okay, some state variables you are using here and here. Okay, so you are storing in the common place. Okay, and then you are this is the context, and then you are getting setting the values here, getting the values from here, using login logout you are setting the values, you are getting the values from here, and this is also setting getting the values, and you are avoiding passing this value from app. Okay, but when you set any of these values, right, since this context provider, this app component is inside the context provider, all the component will get re-rendered whenever state variable is changed. Okay, so that is a problem. So this may decrease our application performance. So instead of that, what we will do, we can go for state management. There are a lot of state management libraries in React. One is Redux, and another is Recoil. So using state management, how you can avoid this kind of re-rendering all the components. Whatever the components which needs that state, right, that component alone should be re-rendered. How to make this possible is via using this state management libraries. We will see how to do this with Recoil in the next video.